Hey everyone, Brian Christman here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, A Kierkegaardian Reading of the Gospel of Mark. Today I want to introduce chapter 2 of the book, which is titled Two Voices Crying in the Wilderness of Despair. This chapter covers Mark chapter 1, verses 2 to 8, where it begins talking about, it quotes Isaiah the prophet saying, a voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make his path straight. And then John appears in the wilderness proclaiming the baptism of repentance and for the forgiveness of sins. And all the people were going out from Jerusalem to him out there in the wilderness to be baptized. So this two voices crying in the wilderness of despair, the purpose of this chapter is to draw a correlation between Kierkegaard and Mark as both being voices crying in the wilderness of despair. Now, wilderness is a huge topic in biblical things, but wilderness is basically, well, the best way to perhaps understand wilderness in the Bible, to summarize it, is to say, well, what's the opposite or what's the contrast with wilderness? It would be civilization. And so civilization is known by, or, propagandized as known by contentment. Civilization is a place where, everyone should be content. Everyone has a civilized life. Everyone has achieved status in life and, is having a good life. So civilization would be known by contentment. Wilderness would be known by despair. Now, most of the people going to John out in the wilderness were people whose lives were full of despair. They were lower class people. They were desperate. People were going out to Mark, partly, or out to John the Baptist, somewhat out of desperation, and desperation is very closely connected to despair. It'd be like today if someone sets out in the wilderness outside of a city and starts preaching something like John. Who would go there from the cities except for the desperate? The people who are well-to-do, have it all together, they're not going out there. So it's a call to the wilderness of despair. But the point is, and especially Kierkegaard brings this out, that it's a call that only the people who are in despair or conscious of despair will heed. They're the ones who are conscious of their despair, and they will go out to the wilderness, which is really going out to the true reality of life, that life is lived in this wilderness experience, which is known as despair. So I have an epigram from Kierkegaard for this chapter. Kierkegaard says, Christianity is certainly not melancholy. It is, on the contrary, glad tidings for the melancholy. To the frivolous, it is certainly not glad tidings, for it wishes, first of all, to make them serious. So he draws that contrast that I've just spoken about, that Christianity it's not melancholy, it's good news. He uses the word melancholy, where I'm using it here kind of as despair, but Christianity is not despair, it's glad tidings. To the despairing, to the melancholy. To the frivolous, it's not glad tidings because they don't need it. They see their lives as contented, in their frivolity. So Kierkegaard says the gospel wishes, first of all, to make them serious. And it does that by calling all humanity to the recognition that life is lived in this wilderness of despair. And that's where God's voice is crying to them from the wilderness. And Kierkegaard's voice was also crying in modern Golden Age Denmark and Copenhagen, calling for people to go to that wilderness of despair. So that's what that chapter is about. I basically talk about how both Kierkegaard and John the Baptist were voices in that wilderness, and they're both voices crying in that wilderness of despair for the purpose of the gospel, to draw people out of frivolity, out of shallowness, out of uniformity, out of crowd conformity. We're all happy, shiny happy people, something like that, to this recognition of the despairing ways of life, or the despairing life into which we are. And so Kierkegaard I talk about in this chapter the despair of not knowing you're in despair, in the sickness and the death. He talks about that, and many people, they don't know they're in despair, but Pascal would say, well, they're actually diverting themselves from that essential unhappiness of despair. And they use all these distractions diversions to divert themselves from the frivolity, the frivolous. They divert themselves from the reality of their life, which is despair. So that's what the chapter is about. Hope that you'll want to read it, and hope this entices you to want to do so. Just an introduction to it. So thank you.